The late afternoon sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the quiet streets of Oak Ridge, a small town 40 miles west of Charlotte, North Carolina. As I, Ethan Marshall, pulled into the gravel driveway of my parents' aging two-story house. At 32, I'd spent the last 5 years pouring my heart and wallet into keeping this place standing, covering their $1,000 monthly mortgage, picking up grocery bills when their pantry ran dry, even spending weekends fixing the creaky porch and patching the leaky roof during a brutal summer storm. The house, with its chipped blue paint and overgrown lawn, was a testament to the sacrifices I'd made for my family, sacrifices I'd never questioned until today. I'd driven over after a long shift at my construction job in Charlotte, my old pickup truck rattling with the weight of a toolbox I'd brought to help my dad, Bill, with some paperwork he'd been struggling with. But as I stepped inside, the air felt heavy with a tension I couldn't quite place. Bill, 65, was hunched over the kitchen table, his reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose as he shuffled through a messy stack of papers, his thinning gray hair catching the light from the overhead lamp. My mom, Clara, 62, was in the living room, flipping through a magazine, her silver hair tied back in a loose bun. I'd always been the dependable son, the one who stepped up when things fell apart, while my younger brother, Dylan, 27, coasted through life with no job, no responsibilities, just a smug grin and a knack for dodging accountability. "Hey, Dad," I said, setting my toolbox by the door, the faint smell of sawdust still clinging to my work boots. "You ready to sort through those papers?" Bill grunted, barely looking up. "Yeah, just scan 'em for me," he said, his voice gruff. "Can't figure out this new printer, too many damn buttons." I nodded, rolling up the sleeves of my flannel shirt, and sat down at the table. The papers, a chaotic jumble of utility bills, tax forms, and bank statements. I'd been helping them with this kind of thing for years, ever since Bill's mechanic shop went under, and Clara's part-time gig at the local library couldn't cover their expenses. I'd paid their mortgage, bought their groceries when their fridge was empty, even shelled out $600 for a new furnace last winter. Dylan, meanwhile, did nothing, sprawling on their couch, binge-watching TV, waiting for life to hand him everything on a silver platter. I didn't think twice about the task until my eyes landed on a folder tucked among the stack, its label sending a chill down my spine. Estate plan and last will and testament. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the folder, a flicker of curiosity sparking in my chest. I wasn't one to pry, but after all I'd done, over $15,000 in support over the years, I couldn't help but wonder how they'd planned for the future. I glanced at Bill, still muttering at the printer, and opened the folder, my heart sinking as I read the words that would change everything. The will left everything, the house, their savings, their assets, to Dylan. Not a single mention of me, except for a generic line about loving both their sons equally. Equally? My stomach churned, a cold wave of betrayal washing over me, as I realized the truth. I'd been their financial lifeline, but in their eyes, I was expendable. While Dylan, the golden child who'd never contributed a dime, was set to inherit it all. What had I been working for all these years? And how would this discovery reshape my relationship with the family I'd given so much to? The kitchen of my parents' house in Oak Ridge, North Carolina, felt like a pressure cooker as I, Ethan Marshall, sat at the table, my hands trembling around the open folder labeled Estate Plan and Last Will and Testament. At 32, I'd spent the last 5 years keeping this house afloat. $1,000 monthly mortgage payments, grocery runs, repairs like the $600 furnace I'd bought last winter. While my brother, Dylan, 27, did nothing but lounge on their couch, a permanent fixture of entitlement. I just discovered their will, and the words on the page hit like a sledgehammer. Everything, the house, their savings, their assets, was going to Dylan, with not a single mention of me, beyond a hollow line about loving both their sons equally. My dad, Bill, 65, was still wrestling with the printer across the room, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me, while the faint rustle of pages from the living room told me my mom, Clara, 62, was still engrossed in her magazine. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Hey, Dad," I said, my voice unnervingly calm as I held up the will, the paper crinkling in my grip. "So this is how it is? Everything to Dylan, after everything I've done for you." Bill's head snapped up, his glasses slipping down his nose as his face went pale, the color draining from his weathered cheeks in an instant. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "it's not what you think." But the words felt empty, a flimsy defense against the betrayal I could feel sinking into my bones. "Really?" I snapped, my calm facade cracking as I stood, my chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. I've been paying your mortgage, buying groceries, fixing this house, while Dylan does nothing, and you still decided he's the only one who matters." Bill shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck, his eyes darting toward the living room, where Clara had gone silent, the rustle of pages replaced by an eerie stillness. "It's complicated," he muttered, his tone weak, as if that two-word excuse could erase the years of sacrifice I'd poured into this family. Clara appeared in the doorway, her magazine still in hand, her face a mix of guilt and defensiveness as she took in the scene. "Ethan, honey," she said, her voice soft, like she was trying to soothe a child, "you don't need the inheritance. You've got a good job. You're independent. Dylan, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." Her words were a dagger, twisting deeper into the wound, and something inside me snapped, the rage and betrayal boiling over. "Taken care of?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the house, my hands shaking as I tossed the will onto the table. "I've been taking care of you for years. Over $15,000 in bills, repairs, groceries, while Dylan sits on his ass, and you think he deserves everything?" "You think I don't matter?" Clara flinched, her eyes filling with tears. But Bill's jaw tightened, his discomfort turning to irritation. "Don't be dramatic," he said, his tone sharp. "We thought you'd understand." "Understand? They'd used me as their personal bank, planned a future where I got nothing, and now they expected me to just accept it?" I took a deep breath, clenching my jaw, and set my resolve. "Got it," I said, my voice eerily calm again. "Glad to know where I stand." I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me, their protests fading into the distance. But how would they react when I stopped being their safety net for good? The silence in my modest apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, was a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind in Oak Ridge, 40 miles away, as I, Ethan Marshall, sat on my couch, staring at my phone 2 weeks after walking out on my parents, Bill and Clara. At 32, I'd spent 5 years supporting them. $1,000 monthly mortgage payments, grocery runs, repairs like the $600 furnace, while my brother, Dylan, 27, contributed nothing, his entitlement enabled by their favoritism. The discovery of their will, leaving everything to Dylan and nothing to me, had shattered my illusions about my place in the family, and I'd made the decision to cut off all financial support, refusing to be their doormat any longer. But the fallout had been immediate, and the messages lighting up my phone screen told me they weren't going to let go without a fight. The first text came from Bill, cold and transactional. Property taxes are due. No apology, no acknowledgement of the betrayal I'd uncovered. Just a demand for money, as if I were still their personal ATM. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping my lips at their audacity, and typed back, "I'm sure Dylan will handle it, since the house is his and all." 5 minutes later, Clara called, her name flashing on my screen, but I let it ring, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and resolve. A text followed. "Ethan, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Now they wanted to talk. After 2 weeks of silence, now that their bills were piling up and reality was hitting hard. I waited an hour before replying. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it." But Dylan, predictably, couldn't resist chiming in, his text dripping with entitlement. "Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do." I nearly threw my phone across the room, his words igniting a fire in my chest. "Not a big deal?" I typed back, my fingers flying over the keys. "Then you won't mind using some of that inheritance to pay the mortgage, right?" His response was instant. "You know I don't have that kind of cash right now." Of course he didn't. He'd never worked a day in his life, relying on our parents to coddle him, and now he expected me to keep footing the bill. I shot back, "Guess you better figure it out, bro. You're the one they chose." The next day, things escalated. My phone buzzed with a bank transfer request from Clara. $2,800, the exact amount of their overdue mortgage. No message, no explanation, just a shameless demand. I declined it without hesitation, but the calls and texts kept coming, Clara's tone shifting to full-on manipulation. "We're going to lose the house if you don't help us." Bill followed with his own guilt trip. "You're really going to let your parents become homeless?" I laughed, the hypocrisy so blatant it was almost funny. They weren't broke. They just didn't want to dip into their savings, so used to me covering everything. But their audacity reached a new level when they showed up at my apartment unannounced, demanding I open the door, their voices echoing through the lobby. What would I do when faced with their relentless pressure in person? The lobby of my apartment building in Charlotte, North Carolina, felt like a war zone as I, Ethan Marshall, stormed downstairs, my blood boiling after my parents, Bill and Clara, showed up uninvited, demanding I open the door and help with their overdue mortgage. At 32, I'd spent 5 years supporting them. $15,000 in mortgage payments, groceries, repairs, only to discover their will left everything to my lazy brother, Dylan, 27, cutting me out entirely. I'd stopped all financial help 2 weeks ago, but their relentless manipulation, texts, calls, a $2,800 bank transfer request, had culminated in this ambush, with Dylan tagging along. His bored expression, a stark contrast to the guilt trips Bill and Clara were throwing. I yanked the door open, my jaw clenched, my arms crossed as I faced them. Their tight formation a clear sign they'd come to corner me into submission. Clara stepped forward first, her arms crossed, her face a mask of disappointment, her voice sharp. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said, as if I hadn't been ignoring their calls for days. "You don't get to show up at my apartment demanding money," I said, my voice calm but firm, cutting her off before she could launch into her spiel. "That's insane," Bill scoffed, his hands in his pockets, his expression a mix of frustration and entitlement. "Are you really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge?" he asked, his tone dripping with accusation. I let out a cold laugh, the word petty igniting a fire in my chest. "Petty grudge?" I said, my voice rising. "You mean the one where you decided I was good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to be in your will? That grudge? Clara clutched her chest, her eyes brimming with tears, the theatrics I'd expected. "Ethan, that's not fair," she said, her voice trembling. "We only did what we thought was best for the family." I tilted my head, my tone icy. "Best for the family or best for Dylan?" I asked, gesturing to my brother, who was staring at the floor, pretending to be invisible. "Just say it." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, until Dylan finally spoke, his voice petulant. "Look, man, I don't even want to be involved in this. I didn't ask for anything," he said, as if that excused his years of freeloading. I turned to him, my anger boiling over. "No, you just sit back and take everything handed to you," I snapped, stepping closer. "You're 27 years old, Dylan. Get a damn job. You want to inherit the house? Start acting like a homeowner. I'm done being your bank." Dylan's face turned red, his mouth opening and closing, but he had nothing to say. Clara tried one last guilt trip, her voice soft and pleading. "Ethan, he's your brother," she said. "Family takes care of each other." I stared at her, my resolve unshaken. "Exactly," I said, my voice steady. "So why didn't you take care of me? You made it clear I wasn't family when you left me out of the will. Dylan can take care of you now." Bill's face darkened, his tone sharp. "You're being selfish," he said, but I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "Selfish?" I said. "I've been bailing you out for years. $15,000 in bills, repairs, groceries, and you repaid me by cutting me out. Now that you're facing the consequences, I'm the selfish one?" I turned and walked back inside, slamming the door behind me, their voices fading as I climbed the stairs. But how would their narrative shift when they took their lies public? The quiet of my Charlotte, North Carolina apartment was shattered by the buzz of my phone as I, Ethan Marshall, sat on my couch, scrolling through Facebook, a day after confronting my parents, Bill and Clara, at my doorstep. At 32, I'd spent 5 years supporting them. $15,000 in mortgage payments, groceries, repairs, only to discover their will left everything to my brother Dylan, 27, cutting me out entirely. I'd stopped all financial help, but their ambush at my apartment, demanding $2,800 for their overdue mortgage, had pushed me to my limit, and I'd sent them away, refusing to be their doormat. Now, as I refreshed my feed, I saw their next move. A series of posts that turned their betrayal into a public smear campaign, painting me as the villain. Clara's post was first, a thinly veiled attack disguised as maternal love. "I didn't raise my son to be so selfish. True family helps each other, no matter what." Her friends chimed in, calling me a disappointment, while Bill's post was more direct. "So-called family shouldn't turn their back when you need them most. We gave everything to our children, and this is how we're repaid. My son has chosen to abandon us. I hope you're happy, Ethan." Dylan, never one to miss a chance for drama, shared his own post. "Some people think family is just about money. They don't understand love and sacrifice. I'd do anything for my parents, but some people are too wrapped up in themselves. I wish they could learn what it really means to be family." The hypocrisy was astounding. He'd never contributed a dime, yet here he was, acting like I was the problem. I sat there, my hands shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief as the comments piled up. Neighbors, distant relatives, even people I barely knew, all buying into their narrative. "Ungrateful," one said. "He'll regret this," another added. But I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story. I opened my own Facebook account, my fingers steady as I typed a lengthy post laying out the truth. "I've been quiet, but I can't stay silent anymore. My family has portrayed me as the selfish one who refuses to help in their time of need. Here's the truth. I've been helping for years, paying their mortgage, groceries, repairs, over $15,000, while Dylan did nothing. Their will leaves everything to him, not a penny for me. I'm done being their wallet, done being treated like I don't matter. Family should be a two-way street. I've given enough, and I'm not apologizing for choosing myself. The reactions were instant. Likes, shares, messages from friends and cousins who apologized for believing my parents' lies. Their support a lifeline in the storm. But my family's response was pure fury. Dylan messaged me, "You're a traitor, airing our business like this. You have no respect for family," Bill called, his voice a roar. "You've ruined everything, Ethan. You'll regret this." I blocked them all, their words fading into silence, and for the first time in years, I felt free, the toxic grip of their manipulation broken. As I looked out my window at the Charlotte skyline, I knew I'd made the right choice. But what would this freedom mean for my future? The morning sun filtered through the blinds of my Charlotte, North Carolina apartment, casting soft shadows across the hardwood floor as I, Ethan Marshall, sat at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand. It had been a week since I'd publicly exposed my parents' betrayal on Facebook, revealing how I'd spent $15,000 over 5 years on their mortgage, groceries, and repairs, only to be left out of their will in favor of my lazy brother, Dylan, 27, who'd never contributed a dime. At 32, I'd walked away from their toxic grip, cutting off all financial support and blocking their numbers after their relentless manipulation. Guilt trips, demands for $2,800, even showing up at my apartment. My post had turned the narrative around, earning support from friends and the community, while Bill, Clara, and Dylan's fury had only solidified my decision to break free. I'd spent the week reflecting, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos of their demands, and with each passing day, I felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of their expectations. I'd started focusing on myself, taking on new projects at work, reconnecting with friends who valued me for me, not what I could give, and even signing up for a local woodworking class, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had time for while supporting my parents. The house in Oak Ridge, 40 miles away, was no longer my responsibility, and I heard through a mutual friend that Bill and Clara were struggling, dipping into their savings for the first time in years. Dylan still refusing to get a job, their golden child unable to fill the gap I'd left. I opened my laptop, scrolling through the comments on my post, the support from friends and even strangers, a reminder that I wasn't alone. "You did the right thing," one wrote. "Family shouldn't treat you like that," another added. I smiled, a quiet peace settling over me as I realized I'd finally chosen myself, refusing to be their doormat any longer. I'd learned a hard lesson, that family isn't about blind sacrifice, but mutual respect, and I deserved better than to be a backup plan for people who'd never truly valued me. As I sipped my coffee, I knew this was just the beginning. A new chapter where I'd build a life on my terms, surrounded by people who saw my worth. Have you ever had to break free from toxic family to find your own path? Share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more tales of courage and self-discovery that prove, sometimes, the greatest freedom comes from letting go. Next week, we're diving into another story of triumph. Don't miss it.